was born in 1935 on the 2nd of March to, my name was Shimon, remember I told you, Stan Ostern, son of Henrik and Henrika. Polish nouns change with depending on the tense. So Henrik becomes Henrika. Yeta Osternov, I was born on, 22nd of March, 1935. Let's see, it was March 10th, 1940, under Russian occupation. This is a Russian stamp.
When did you first start telling your story?
I'd say about 10 years ago, not before that.
And how has it changed in terms of telling your story now versus 10 years ago? Have you seen a change in the way you tell it, or your feelings about telling it?
Well, it was difficult in the beginning, but now it's easier, of course, I've done it so many times.
Tell me again how old you were when you went into the bunker.
Well, I was 7 years old, so when I got out, I was 9. I was born to a well-off family. Things were relatively quiet. Until 1939, we were invaded for a brief period of time by the Germans. And that part of Poland, after about a week, was ceded to the Russians. So we just kind of existed. But there was a man named Morgenstern, Mr. Morgenstern, who decided that things weren't working out too well with the Russians, and we needed a hiding place just in case the Germans ever came back. So he decided to build a bunker with the help of several people, and it was done in secret. And the problem with building the bunker was somebody had to live in the house above and supply food. The bunker could only be supplied with meager amounts of food, dried food. The air supply for this bunker were 2 chimneys. The chimneys up in the attic, and that was the excess he had to communicate and send us food. Our power was supplied by a gas line, which he hooked into too, and we had gas lights, and we had bed bugs and lice. We tried to keep clean. He had one water pump, which we had to be quiet. It was kind of noisy. The old-fashioned water pumps made a lot of noise. We did what we could with the water to try to wash ourselves, but that wasn't too satisfactory. Toilet facilities were basically just a hole in the ground. There were no sewers to hook into. But the original bunker was actually planned for no more than 15, 18 people. By the time it was sealed up, we got 35 people. So you can imagine how crowded this was. Going into the bunker and not knowing what's going to happen, being sealed in this tomb. Basically, can you imagine the claustrophobia in there? With all these people who you didn't know, and they're not sure where the food is coming from, and not sure whether you're going to survive the next day. And the worst part was number 1 was hunger, and number 2 was fear, because we had known what was going to happen if we were found out. I mean, this bunker was built for 15 people, so you double that amount, and there were territorial fights. Sometimes we used to crawl on top of this wall with the sand and the wood holding against it, because that was cool. The sand was cool, just to cool off on there. And I said, what do we do there? Well, we just whispered, I guess. We just never spoke in a normal tone because we didn't want anybody to hear. What stands in my mind is seeing a big rat. We had rats this big. These rats became tame after about a year, and they just kind of crawled between our feet. Nobody got bitten, believe it or not. And this one rat, we saved a couple of bites of, we had this black bread. And this rat actually started stealing the bread. Wherever you hid it, he would find it, or she. Might have been a female rat. And I was wondering, they would crawl away, and he looked pretty fat, well-fed, and I was skinny and hungry, and this rat was well-fed. I was wondering, how come this rat can go outside and see the fresh air and the sky, and I'm trapped in here? What did I personally do? And I never got an answer, because I'm a Jew. But what did I do to anybody else? We represent a very small percentage of the population, and we were punished for no reason. We were liberated in 1944 by the Russian army, and we were dug out. Basically, someone had to dig us out to get us up on top. And we, after 2 years, smell the fresh air and see the sun. And it was wonderful. And have food, because we were constantly hungry and undernourished. You talk about what the war did. I was a pretty stable person until my mother died 14 years ago. And that time I felt like an orphan, because that was it in my family. You know, that was the whole family that survived the Holocaust. I went to a depression. Actually, I'd never been depressed, and I experienced post-traumatic stress. Actually, I was afraid of being home alone, afraid of what's going to happen. It's amazing to feel this. I've heard patients describing it, but to have it happen to you, it's amazing. And lasted about 6 months, and then I gradually snapped out of it. But I periodically have some bad dreams, being chased and being caught by the Nazis. So that's part of it. And as far as how it's affected me, I really like going to schools. I really like talking to kids and telling them what intolerance and hate can do. And that's been my mission. Somebody asked me once, do you hate the Nazis or the Germans? Yeah, maybe initially I did hate, but I was thinking about hate. If you hate so much, it ties you up. You can't do anything. And you think about it, the person that you hate is controlling you. There's inertia, you can't do anything. So hate is counterproductive. It's never led to anything. So you have to be tolerant of your fellow man. You don't have to love him, but tolerant your fellow man. Try to understand your fellow man. Otherwise, it leads to what I went through.
I guess what I'd like to ask to wind things up would be, if there's one thing or more than one thing, what would you want people to know about you?
I didn't do anything extraordinary. I was there as a child, so I couldn't do anything. It just happened to me. And I was lucky, because I came across people who were able to build a bunker, people who were able to hide us, but 12,000 Jews in our town didn't survive because they weren't lucky enough. So whatever reason, there must have been some reason. There's a survivor's guilt, we talked about that. Sometimes I felt, why did I survive and somebody else in my family did not survive? Maybe it's because I'm here to tell the story, so it shouldn't happen again. Especially when 1.3 million children were killed. Those children could have been doctors, scientists. They're not here. So maybe I represent those children. And I'm the youngest, one of the youngest of the survivors. And to tell the story. And I think maybe that's the reason I was saved.